All right, here we go. Me and Dawn are ready to rock and roll. We're excited to go fishing. It's a little windy this morning on Lake St Clair, but it's still beautiful. And we're boat 88, flight 8, weighing in at 310. Time to see what God has in store for us. Hopefully we catch big ones and put them in the boat. We got to hook them and land them. We'll see. So leading up to this tournament, we had absolutely beautiful weather, a little bit of rain, but for the most part, calm conditions and really, really nice. Now, the last day and a half before the tournament, we had horrible conditions and actually a hurricane, which turned into a tropical depression and then ripped up right dead center through Lake St. Clair, through Michigan, hit us. And it dropped a ton of rain. I mean, absolutely dumped buckets of rain on us, several inches. And I didn't know how it was going to affect the fishing, but I figured it would a little bit, but I really didn't think a giant lake like Lake St. Clair would dirty up. But it actually ended up dirtying up. There's so much grass also up shallow on that lake that a lot of the rivers dumped a bunch of grass in. Now, I didn't realize that, and I started, and it's low light. You can see it's windy, and I started right here out in front of the ramp, and I had caught some really big fish in practice out there. And it was different. I was trying to get my bait to fall through the grass. I could see it all in my live scope, so it was hard to actually see the fish. But I did end up getting a bite pretty quick. Now, the problem with this video is I'm going to have to do a lot of narrating because I ended up, somehow my GoPro did not record audio. Just a loose connection when it's in its box that I film out of. And it didn't record audio. But this first bite right here was one that I needed just to get the day started, and it wasn't very big, but I was happy to have it. 2.5 pounders definitely do not cut it at Lake St. Clair. So along with the dirtier water and all the grass and stuff like that was in the water column, like it was top to bottom with this this grass that got blown out of the creeks or the rivers. And the other thing that happened was it was windy that morning. I had practiced in very calm conditions, but you'll see right here it was blowing pretty good, like 10 miles per hour, so nothing major, but it was whipping, and that made hitting the targets even more difficult. So you got grass in the water, wind blowing, tough to hit the targets, but this was a good one right here. And this one is one that I did not weigh in, but at the moment, it's a 3 3/4 pounder and one you definitely don't mind having 30 minutes, 20 minutes into the tournament day. So I was starting to see that the water was dingier and I was starting to get irritated by the grass, and I did catch a few more decent keepers right here, but I knew it was time to crank up the Skeeter and Yamaha and run around this big beautiful lake and check some new places. So that's what I did. I moved on, and that was one of the keys, is moving to different areas if it wasn't quite happening where you were. Believe it or not, that was the only wave I ever took over my bow the entire time I was at Lake St. Clair, which is pretty dang good. And I will say that the Skeeter is such a dry boat. I mean, the bow rides high. It's just a very stable fishing platform. So I really didn't have any issues as far as taking waves. That one was a big boat wake, and that was another thing you had to contend with. While you're catching these big, beautiful smallmouth, you had to contend with boat wakes, and especially closer to the weekend and in the afternoons when the weather got pretty, the big giant yachts and all that stuff got out there. There's also ships running up and down Lake St. Clair all the time through the shipping channel. And so it was just another thing you had to think about. But this was a good one right here. I stepped back and I land all my fish sitting in my seat. I like to sit in the chair and I sit there. I try to tire them out before I get them there so they're not too green. I sit there, I work the fish around. These smallmouth are the meanest fish I've ever caught. And so they would run and run and run and just keep on digging. But I was very patient throughout the week and I never ended up losing any that hurt me at all. So you'll see I stuck a few more small keepers right here on the drop shot. And, I had like 15 pounds at this point of the day, and they were biting the drop shot really good. It's a fun bite. You throw at them, you see them swimming, you throw at them, and you watch them dart down to it on the bottom, and you just dead stick it down there, pick up, and it's heavy. And, it's a great way to catch them, but I like to adjust and switch things up. I tried the Ned Mickey a good bit and caught fish on it, and I was also catching them on a little crappie jig, the Z-Man OG Ned head with the tail of a Streaks 375 on it, which is pretty cool. So you can see I pick it up right here, fired out there at 3 fish that chased my drop shot and wouldn't eat them, and I teased it up over this one. I called them up way off the bottom with this little bait, and I was just tickling it perfect, and this is the bite that I was looking for. This is one of those true Lake St. Clair big ones that are absolutely all over in that lake, but they're essential to having a good tournament. You got to have some of these bigger quality fish. This one right here weighed 4.86, so just a little bit under 5 pounds, and was an absolute beautiful one. I caught a lot of those in practice, not tons and tons of them, but that was a great quality one to have. Right here, boat flipped another moderate to severe, I always say moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. I know that's not a joke. Plaque psoriasis is not funny, but I hear the commercials all the time, and so I say that. But that one did not help, and fortunately I was working on a solid bag here with about 18 pounds, but I had to weed through a lot of small ones. You'll see I switched back to the drop shot, caught another one right here on the drop shot, and just was working around trying to figure out, okay, how can I cull up from that 18 pounds to get in that 20-pound range? So one of the biggest keys to these smallmouth tournaments is being efficient. And at this point I had 18 pounds, like I said, and so I wanted to land the medium-sized fish as fast as possible. So you'll see I was fighting them a little more aggressive. I was trying to land them quicker. I was a little more careless landing them. And this one right here was a solid fish, but I just wanted to be quick because I knew that bringing back a 3 1/4 pounder to weigh in was not going to do it for me. So you can see again here, I'm just trying to land these ones quickly, weed through them, and get to that bigger bite that I knew I needed. So after catching a bunch of small ones in the area I was in and not calling up much, I decided to run to a place where I'd caught some really good ones in practice, and I pulled up there and I got by far the most important bite of the day. And it was an absolutely beautiful Lake St Clair smallmouth, and the one that everyone's looking for out there. Or if you're Jay Shakir, you were looking for 5 of those a day, which I would have loved to have had. And I think if I could do this tournament over again, I could have been more efficient. But this was an awesome fish. I saw him a long ways out in front of the boat, made a good cast to him, and let the drop shot get all the way down to the bottom, just perfect. And this fish hit it coming at me and ran towards me really fast, and the battle was on. I mean, it was a several-minute fight with a true Lake St Clair giant. I definitely took my time with this one, and look how perfect this Lake St Clair bass was. Just an absolute beast. I caught a bunch of 4 1/2 pounders in the tournament. I had like 22 to 23 a day in practice, and that one right there was the biggest fish I caught all week at 5.56. Just an absolutely perfect specimen. So at that point I had well over 20 pounds, and I still had a few like 3 1/4, 3 1/2s in the bag, but I had that 486 and I had now the 556. So like I said, 2 of the right bites, and it was time to just keep on working, keep my head down, keep fishing hard, and see if I could cull up. So that one right there was about 3 3/4 again. It was like a 374. And then I did something kind of stupid right here. I threw at one with the crappie jig actually that I did not think was a bass. I kind of thought it was a muskie, but I wasn't exactly sure, and I threw at it, and it was not a muskie either, but it was a beautiful, or kind of an ugly, pike. And check out what was all over the sides of this northern. This poor dude was covered up in lampreys, just nasty, all over its belly, on its face. And so I did the right thing. I plucked the lamprey. I got him unhooked first, of course, and then I plucked the lampreys off, flicked them back in the water, and let her go. And I'm sure, it can't help them as far as their health goes when they're covered in lampreys. I don't know if it really made that fish skinny or not, but it was nasty. So this right here was my last good cull of the day. It was getting late, and I was still catching a lot of fish. Really, I feel like if I could have had a little more time, that afternoon bite was critical. And I soaked the drop shot down there on it, watched the fish root around down there on the live scope, and hooked another good solid one. And these fish were so mean. I mean, they would just fight and fight and fight. I played it around the boat, grabbed her, and it was another one of those good fish you want. It was a solid 3 3/4, pushing 4 pounder, and it helped out a little bit. And it was time to head back to weigh-in after boat flipping a few more small ones. So here you see I was checking in, and you can see how dirty the water got coming out of the river right there by the boat ramp. And I was fired up. I ended up weighing in 5 smallmouth bass for 22 pounds, 2 ounces, and I was in 22nd place. That's how good they caught them. And you can see how pretty these bass were. Just beautiful fish. And my day 2 video with audio, I must add, will be dropping in the next couple days.